That envelope sat between the wine glasses and the bread basket like a loaded gun. My mother's diamond ring caught the light as she slid it across the tablecloth. My sister Madison had her phone ready, angled just right, because everything in our family had to be documented. The string quartet playing in the corner actually hesitated mid-note. Even they could feel something was about to break. Inside that envelope wasn't a graduation card. It wasn't money. It was a disownment letter, signed by all three of them. My parents. My sister. My whole family, neatly packaged with a bow on top. Happy graduation, Cameron. I folded it once. Then twice. Stood up without a word. No tears, no scene, just the weight of paper in my hand and a smile they'd never understand. They thought they'd written my ending that night. What they didn't realize was they'd just started their own. Stay with me. You'll see how silence can be the loudest revenge of all. Growing up as Cameron Wilson meant learning to read a room before you learned to read a book. Love in our house came with conditions, fine print, performance reviews. My father, Richard Wilson, ran a private equity firm. Everything was ROI, return on investment. Even his children. My mother, Vivian, chaired charity galas and measured success in appearances, in who saw what, in how things looked from the outside. And my sister Madison. She was their masterpiece. The perfect blend of ambition and presentation. At dinner parties, I was always introduced last. Madison is a senior associate at Lancaster and Webb in Manhattan, my mother would say, her hand resting proudly on my sister's shoulder. Her voice carried across the room like an announcement. Then came the pause. The shift in tone. And this is Cameron. She's still studying. Still studying. Like I was a project that hadn't quite delivered results yet. Like I was late to my own life. Guests would nod politely, glance at me just long enough to be courteous, then redirect their attention to the champagne or the canapés. I learned to smile back. Quiet. Predictable. Invisible. Our dining room always smelled like cedar polish and expectation. The chandelier above the table threw fractured light across everything. Crystal glasses, silver forks, my untouched water. I used to count those tiny reflections while my father discussed market volatility and my mother rehearsed her gratitude speeches for donors who confused vanity with virtue. Madison thrived in that atmosphere. She knew exactly when to laugh softly, when to tilt her head to look engaged, when to offer an opinion that sounded smart but never threatening. I studied her like she was a science experiment. Every gesture calculated. Every pause intentional. I took a different route. While Madison networked at corporate mixers, I worked night shifts at a café near campus. The espresso machine hissed louder than any conversation at home, and honestly, I preferred it. People there didn't care about last names or trust funds. They just wanted their oat milk latte and their names spelled right. It was simple. Honest. Measurable. One Sunday after a double shift, I came home to find Madison at the kitchen counter, laptop open, my father pouring himself wine. "We were just talking about you," he said, swirling the glass like he was preparing to deliver a quarterly report. "Madison thinks you're wasting your time behind a coffee counter." Madison didn't even look up from her screen. "It's not wasting, Dad. It's character building." Her tone was light, almost playful, but there was an edge underneath, sharp enough to cut. I forced a laugh. "I'm funding my tuition." My father shrugged. "Degrees don't pay bills, Cameron. Numbers do. Remember that." I wanted to tell him I understood numbers better than anyone in that house. That I could build systems, track variables, model outcomes in ways he'd never considered. But his attention had already drifted back to Madison, back to the child who made sense to him. After that night, I stopped trying to join their conversations. I just watched. Observed. Collected data in the quiet way that made sense to me. But there were moments, brief, fragile moments, where I thought maybe things would change. Like when I earned the National Research Scholarship. Full ride. Competitive. Only 15 students nationwide. I sent them the email with the press clipping attached. Waited. My mother replied 6 hours later, "So proud of you, sweetheart. We have a gala tonight. Can we post about it tomorrow?" They never did. That was the day I understood something simple but permanent. In my family, attention was currency. And I was always the unpaid intern in their empire. I remember the sound of crystal glasses clinking that night, perfectly rhythmic, like the house itself was celebrating my invisibility. That was the night I learned my place, somewhere between silence and proof. 2 days before graduation, a message appeared in the family group chat. Just a reservation link. Hawthorne and Vale. The same restaurant my mother booked for every milestone that mattered. The message was clinical. Pre-graduation dinner for Cameron. Dress appropriately. No emoji. No warmth. Just a formality wrapped in control. I clicked the link. The reservation was under the Wilson family, Richard, Vivian, Madison. My name wasn't even listed. That omission wasn't a mistake. It was a message. You're invited to your own celebration, but you're not really part of it. An hour later, Madison texted privately. Don't overthink it. It's just formatting. Formatting. Right. That's what I was to them. A variable easily deleted from the equation. That night, I sat at my desk, city lights flickering through my apartment window like static. My inbox glowed with notifications. Investors interested in my project, professors sending congratulations, classmates asking about post-grad plans. Achievements. Milestones. Recognition. None of it mattered when the people who taught you your worth still measured you in silence. I scrolled through old family photos on my phone. Vacations in the Hamptons. Holiday cards. Fundraiser galas. My mother's flawless posture. My father's rehearsed smile. Madison's practiced charm. And me, always at the edge of the frame, half lit, half seen. It wasn't new. It was just the first time I saw it without hope. The next morning, I got an email from the university. They were confirming my speaking slot at commencement. My mentor, Dr. Davis, had nominated me for the Young Leader in Technology Award. Her note said, "This is your moment, Cameron. Own it quietly." Quietly. That word felt like permission. Like a door opening. I closed my laptop and took a long breath. Sunlight cut through my blinds in clean geometric lines. I looked around my apartment, the coffee mug aligned with my notebook, papers stacked by color, the clock ticking its steady rhythm. My life wasn't chaotic. It was organized. Just not by them anymore. I smiled. The kind of smile you wear when you already know how the story ends. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was what I'd been building in the background. It started small. A research project for Dr. Davis's data systems course. Route optimization for delivery logistics. Nothing glamorous. Just clean code and good math. My classmates Elliot and Sage joined me. Elliot handled analytics. Sage shaped the user interface. And I wrote the core algorithm, the heart of everything. We called it SwiftRoute. What began as an assignment evolved into something real. A platform that helped small logistics companies optimize delivery routes, cut costs, reduce fuel waste. It worked. It actually worked. The late nights in the computer lab became my refuge. While my family attended charity auctions and wine tastings, I was debugging code at 3 a.m, running simulations, testing edge cases. Elliot would bring coffee. Sage would sketch interface designs on napkins. We weren't just building software, we were building something that mattered to people who actually worked for a living. I remember the first time a small courier company in Milwaukee tested our beta version. The owner, Elena, called me directly. "You just saved me 4 hours a day," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "That's 4 hours I get to spend with my kids now." That phone call meant more than any dinner party compliment ever could. The breakthrough came early one morning, long before sunrise. I was running simulations, tweaking variables, when the numbers shifted. Fuel cost reduction, 12%. But more than that, delivery time optimization, 18%. Driver overtime, cut by 22%. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't just good. This was scalable. This was real. Proof. Tangible, undeniable proof. By the time the university startup symposium arrived, SwiftRoute was ready. We had 3 paying clients, a waiting list of 12 more, and metrics that told a story my father would actually understand, if he'd ever bothered to ask. Dr. Davis stopped me before I went on stage. "You don't need to sell yourself," she said. "Just show them how it works. Let the data speak." It did. When my presentation ended, the applause started polite, then grew genuine. Among the crowd stood a man in a tailored gray suit. Adrian Cross, CEO of Vanguard Logistics. He approached afterward, his expression measured but interested. "You've built something scalable," he said, studying my graphs. "But more than that, something fair." Fair. A word I hadn't heard in years. We met twice after that symposium. Coffee. Then lunch. Business discussions that felt more like conversations. Adrian had built Vanguard from the ground up, starting with 2 trucks and a dream. He understood what it meant to prove yourself when no one was watching. The third time, Adrian slid a folder across the table. Inside was a letter of intent. Vanguard wanted to acquire SwiftRoute for $6.2 million. Plus a director-level position for me after graduation. I didn't sign immediately. I read every clause, every subline, every piece of fine print. I wanted to make sure the system I'd built, the one built from silence, not privilege, stayed intact. That Elena in Milwaukee would still get her 4 hours back. That the drivers would still benefit. When I finally signed, it wasn't triumph I felt. It was balance. From that point on, I started building my own archive. Digital copies of every document, time-stamped and encrypted. Transaction receipts. Licensing records. Payment confirmations. The kind of paper trail that doesn't just tell a story, it seals it. The night I received the final transfer confirmation, I printed the letter. The sound of paper sliding out of the printer was cleaner than any applause I'd ever heard. That's when I opened the family group chat for the first time in months. The most recent message was from my mother. A photo of Madison at some law firm gala, captioned, "Proud doesn't begin to cover it." I typed a simple reply, "Graduation dinner confirmed. I'll be there." No explanation. No emojis. Just confirmation. After that, I cleaned my apartment the way I always did before major moments. Every item in its place. Every line symmetrical. My offer letter from Vanguard. My degree folder. And a small, faded birthday card my mother gave me when I was 8, to my little dreamer, written in her perfect script. I placed the new documents beneath it. Fresh ink, heavy paper. 2 versions of my story, stacked in order. Midnight came quietly. I poured the last of my coffee and watched the city lights ripple across the river. I thought about that dinner, their smiles, the cameras, the performance they'd planned. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. They were bringing their letter, thinking it would define me. What they didn't know was I'd already signed something far more permanent. My independence. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. First light caught the corner of my desk, gleaming off the silver clip holding my contracts together. I touched the paper lightly, grounding myself. I didn't dress for them. I dressed for the record. Clean blazer. Hair tied back. Neutral tones. The kind of look that doesn't beg to be seen but demands to be remembered. Before leaving, I aligned my coffee cup next to my laptop, exactly 1 inch from the edge. Habit. Order. Proof. The streets of Chicago were still damp from overnight rain, reflections stretching across the asphalt. My reflection looked back at me from a passing cab window. Calm. Composed. Someone I recognized for the first time. When I arrived at Hawthorne and Vale, I stopped in front of the glass doors. Inside, I could see the shimmer of chandeliers, my mother's silhouette, the familiar tilt of Madison's head as she adjusted her phone camera. I took one steady breath. They thought tonight was their stage. They had no idea the script had already been rewritten. I wasn't walking into their performance. I was walking into proof. The hostess smiled when she saw me. Wilson Party. Her tone was professional, but I caught the flicker of surprise when she realized my name wasn't on the list. Yes, I said. They're expecting me. Inside, the air smelled like truffle butter and expensive wine. My family occupied the corner table under a halo of chandelier light. My mother waved like this was a reunion, not an execution. Madison lifted her phone slightly, framing the shot. "Cameron, darling," my mother said, voice dipped in sugar. "We have something special for you." A server appeared, setting a pristine white envelope beside my plate. My father cleared his throat. "It's time we all move forward." My mother's smile widened. "From all of us." Madison's camera caught everything, the envelope sliding across linen, my expression unreadable. I opened it slowly. The paper was heavy. Embossed. Legal. We, the undersigned, hereby release and relinquish all familial obligations and ties with Cameron Wilson. It was signed by each of them. Perfect initials. Practiced loops. 3 signatures that should have broken me. My graduation gift. The table watched, waiting. Maybe for tears. Maybe for a raised voice. Some kind of scene they could later explain away as me being dramatic, unstable, ungrateful. But I'd already lived the real drama. This was just the epilogue. I folded the paper once. Then twice. Placed it carefully beside my coffee spoon. The motion was deliberate, controlled, the same way I'd learned to fold receipts at the café, the same precision I used when coding. "Thank you," I said. My tone even. Deliberate. Madison blinked. "You're thanking us." I met her gaze. Held it. The air tightened, thin as glass. My father shifted in his chair. My mother's hand hovered over her wine. Madison lowered her phone slightly, unsure what she was filming anymore. The narrative wasn't following the script they'd written. "Cameron," my mother said softly, "you don't have to make this harder." But I was already reaching into my bag. I pulled out a folder. Same neutral gray as the suit Adrian had worn the day he handed me the contract. I placed it on the table and opened it toward them. Inside was the acquisition announcement. Vanguard letterhead gleaming under the light. Beneath it, my name, Director of Data Operations, Swift Route Integration Lead. For a moment, no one spoke. The quartet in the background shifted songs, unaware they were scoring a funeral. Madison leaned forward, reading fast. Her face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, something that might have been respect. "This is yours." "Yes." My father frowned. The kind he reserved for bad investments. "You sold it." "I built it," I said quietly. "Then I sold it." The deal closed last week. 6.2 million. Plus equity and a leadership position. The number landed like a physical thing. I watched my father's face recalculate, watched him try to reconcile the daughter he'd dismissed with the figure on the page. My mother tried to recover. Her social training kicked in, that ability to smooth over anything. "We didn't know." "Cameron, why didn't you tell us?" "I know," I said. "You didn't ask." It was the first time I'd ever seen my mother truly speechless. The woman who could charm donors out of 6-figure checks, who could navigate any social situation with grace, she had nothing. Madison's phone was still in her hand, but the red recording light was off now. My father reached for his wine glass, but his grip trembled just enough for the stem to click against the marble table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I simply stood. "You can keep the letter," I said, sliding their disownment papers back across the table. "I already have my own." The irony landed quietly. Perfectly. They tried to cut me off, but I'd already moved on, with more success than they'd ever given me credit for. Behind me, I heard Madison whisper something, maybe a plea, maybe a curse, but I didn't turn back. As I reached the doorway, the restaurant's soft piano filled the silence they'd left behind. I paused. One hand on the frame. City lights reflecting in the glass ahead of me. In that reflection, I saw them still sitting there, surrounded by the world they'd built. Bright. Polished. Empty. Outside, the air was colder than I expected. It smelled like rain and freedom. I checked my phone. New messages from Vanguard. Notifications from press outlets already picking up the acquisition story. Tech blogs wanted interviews. LinkedIn was blowing up. Proof. All time-stamped. The envelope in my hand felt lighter now. Just paper and ink. Nothing more. They'd given me their silence years ago. Tonight, I returned it, perfected. The night air off Lake Michigan was sharp, clean enough to rinse away everything that clung to me from inside that restaurant. The city pulsed beyond the glass towers, indifferent and alive. I walked without rush. Each step lighter than the last. When I reached my apartment, the sky had thinned into early dawn. Pale light spilled through the blinds, painting quiet patterns on the floor. I set the envelope on the counter next to my framed degree. Their letter looked small beside it. 2 documents. Two versions of my name. One they erased. One they couldn't. I made coffee. Poured it slow and steady. The cup clicked softly against the table. That sound had become my pulse, measured, controlled, alive. I didn't reread their letter. It had already served its purpose. A timestamp marking the exact moment I stopped asking to belong. Now it sat behind glass, flattened between achievements that couldn't be deleted. My phone vibrated once. A text from Madison. We didn't mean it like that. Can we talk? I stared at it for a while. The dots blinked. Disappeared. Blinked again. Then I turned the phone face down. Some messages aren't meant to be answered. They're meant to echo into silence. The light shifted warmer. Outside, the city stretched awake, delivery vans, joggers, the rhythm of another ordinary day. I opened the window, letting the air in. Somewhere below, a train screeched metal against metal. Raw and honest. In the reflection on the glass, I saw a woman who no longer needed to explain why she was standing there alone. I picked up their letter one last time. Folded it neatly. Slid it behind the frame of my degree. Not hidden. Just placed in order. Evidence of what was. Proof of what changed. The air in the room steadied. My shoulders did too. Silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. Revenge doesn't always sound like victory. Sometimes it sounds like a calm breath in a quiet room. The kind of silence you choose, not the kind forced on you. Families break loudly. Peace rebuilds quietly. They wrote me out of their story, but I became the footnote they'll never erase. Some stories don't end with forgiveness. They end with clarity. And clarity, that's something you can build your entire life on. Thanks for listening. If this story touched you, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment about a time you turned silence into strength, and subscribe for more stories about finding your worth when the world tries to define it for you. Because sometimes the best response isn't a fight, it's proof.